today's video is going to talk about two different questions for task 1 in the IELTS exam. So if you're preparing for IELTS, maybe you've got an exam coming up, this is the video for you. And if you're new here, welcome. We can help you through different tasks in the IELTS exam, the writing tasks, and hopefully this will help you along your way. So today we will be starting with a task 1 line graph question. Now this is a common type of question in the IELTS exam, so we'll have a look at that first. Okay, so let's dive in. Okay, so we're in the exam, we open the booklet, and here we are presented with this question. So it can be daunting, but we're just going to break it down and really see what the question is asking from us. Okay, so the question is, the graph below gives information about international tourist arrivals in 5 countries. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so let's have a think here. We want to, let me get my pen. We want to summarize. That's our first task. And how do they want us to summarize? Well, they say it by selecting and reporting main features and make comparisons where relevant. So where relevant, this is an interesting section. So we can gather from this this feature that, okay, well, we don't want to be making comparisons all the time. We just want to be making them when is particularly relevant to the point that we're trying to make. Okay, so now we can look at the graph itself. So on the x-axis down here, I can do a spotlight to help us. Down at the bottom here, you have the x-axis, and this is telling us the years. So we start in the year 1995. Some of us were around for then, and then we end in 2010. And the different colour of the lines represent the 5 countries we have here. So we have Brazil, Egypt, Malaysia, France, and the USA. Okay, so then we go to the y-axis, and this represents the the amount of international tourist arrivals in millions. Okay, so we can look at it overall and just take a second to soak it in. We don't want to make rash decisions here. Obviously time is a concern, but we want to make sure we fully understand the data. So some initial thoughts are great here. So I might think, okay, Brazil remains quite steady at the bottom, and then we have the USA definitely at the top, but with a slight decline at the later years. France has a very sharp increase initially. So we can start having some thoughts. Okay, let's dive in now. So this is where we can think about our plan for this. And the essential part of the plan is to think about groupings. So we want to show the examiner that we've logically grouped together variables, so in this case countries, I would say, and in our plan it might be a nice idea to include the overview as well. So we want a general overview statement and our groupings. So initial thoughts for this here this is group 1 and the semicolon. So group 1 then, let's have a think. I mean, initially, to me, Malaysia, Egypt and Brazil have a very similar sort of trajectory. They are following the same pattern, so they might work as a group. We could talk about those quite nicely. And then we have France and the USA as well. France also increases with arrivals, so we could talk about France maybe in the second group initially, because it's increasing like group 1, Malaysia, Egypt and Brazil, but there's a different pattern, there's a different trajectory. It's a hard word to say. So we could talk about that initially in group 2, and then we could contrast with the USA perhaps at the end, to contrast with all the other countries here. So let's go with that. We are obviously concerned about time, so we want to sort of crack on and I'd say go with our gut on this. So group 1, we can talk about Malaysia, we can talk about Egypt, and we can talk about Brazil. Brilliant. Okay, and then group 2, we can contrast this. We can start, well, not contrast, but yes, France, which links with group 1 because France arrivals in France increase. However, it's a different pattern there. And then we can create a contrast with the USA. Okay, so the overall statement, I mean, generally, what strikes me is that there is an increase in international arrivals overall. Obviously, we'll talk about the finer details in the question, but overall increase in international arrivals, and we can perhaps make an additional observation and say something like especially France, because they have a big increase there. Okay, so we've understood the question, we've thought about groups, we've thought about our overall statement, our summary, if you like, generally speaking. So now let's dive in to the questions. So here we have our question again. We have our data, of course, and here we've got we thought we'd add quite a nice table. So this can talk about, let me do the spotlight. Here we go. So we've got some really great words that we can use for task 1 here. Words that can help us with synonyms for decreased. So we've got words like fell, declined. Then in the middle here we've got when something doesn't change, you can say plateaued. That's a great word, stabilized. And then we've got words for when something increases. So rocketed, climbed. And we can use these in conjunction with adverbs to create really nice sentences here. So, for example, France, international arrivals to France, rocketed significantly, and then you can carry on with the rest of your sentence. So really nice words. They are there to help us with our question. Of course, you won't have this in the exam, but I think it's nice to have it there to refer to when we're doing the question together. Okay, so let's get started. So the full question goes here. Okay, so we want to start by paraphrasing the question. Now, this is a very important skill and one that is essential to practice for task 1. So we are going to simply look at, oh, not the writing, the question here again, and we're going to paraphrase it. So to paraphrase it, we're not going to use the exact words. We're going to find synonyms and other words to use, and that way we'll show the examiner that we fully understand the question. Okay, so we can say the question says the graph below. Let's be more specific. The line graph below, and then we have gives information. Perhaps we can say something like provides data on the topic of, okay, now we have international tourist arrivals. International tourist arrivals, we could have, what's another word for international, perhaps? Maybe worldwide visitors. Visitors that span the world, international. Worldwide visitors in 5 countries. We can say something like topic of worldwide visitors to perhaps various destinations. Oh, and a good point here. Spelling, very important for the top band schools. So, various destinations. And then we can refer to the graph here. So we could say perhaps over 15 years. There we go. Okay, let's read back. The line graph below provides data on the topic of worldwide visitors to various destinations over 15 years. Brilliant. Good point to always just read as you go, edit as you go. It's a lot less overwhelming to do that now rather than, you know, at the end if you run out of time or something, it can make a big difference. So, okay, paraphrasing complete. Now we want to go to our overview. So we want to give a line or two and basically summarize what we see. And we'll go into details later. So a nice way to start off an overview can be words like generally, overall, on the whole. I'm sure you have synonyms that you like to use. So any synonym, equivalent that you like. I'm going to go with on the whole. I like that one. On the whole, and we have this in our plan if you remember. So on the whole, the number of tourists increased during this time. That's the general trend. And we wanted to mention France as an additional point. So we can say something like additionally. A synonym for additionally could be plus, also, as well as, moreover. You get the idea. Anyone that you like. So additionally, the sharpest. Okay, so we're using the words from our sort of reminder here. The sharpest increase was seen in France, because France starts off with just over 30. Like I say, we'll go into details later, but ends at this looks like above 80 here. So I think that's perfect for your overview. Okay, so now we can get into the nitty-gritty. We can really dive in. use the figures to support our arguments and go for it, really. Okay, so let's think about our group 1. We can refer to the plan that we've made, and we're starting off with these countries down here. So how about we go for Egypt and Brazil. So these lines at the bottom. In 1995, which is the starting point for our line graph, 1995 had almost the same number of visitors. Almost, not quite, but you know, we can be a bit more. They're very, very close here, so that's okay. Had almost the same number of visitors, around 7 million. So there we go. They're basically the same ballpark there. So then we can look at 2010 perhaps, and look at the pattern there. So in 2010, both countries also had a similar number. But we've used, yes, and we're making sure as we go along that we don't repeat ourselves. So we want to use different language. So here we've got the same, similar, almost the same, similar. So they're synonyms of each other. So that's good. Where were we? Had a similar number. And now we can sort of look, oh, okay, what do we think here? Brazil might be 12, 13, and Egypt might be more like 17 at a maximum. But to include, just to be make sure that we don't want to be too specific, so we can widen the gap a little bit, and maybe say between 12 and 17 million. There we go. Okay. And then I quite like a dash sometimes, actually. And we just want to make an observation. Oh, not a straight increase. This is where our editing comes in. A steady increase. Not too sharp, but not too rapid, but it's steady. So we can just make that observation there. So we're reporting back. Okay, so we've done Brazil, we've done Egypt. Now we can go towards the other country in that group, Malaysia. Okay, so how about we say another place that grew gradually in popularity, perhaps. Popularity. So we're already stating that, okay, this popularity, we know what the topic is, so we don't have to always repeat ourselves. Grew in popularity is Malaysia. Okay. Or perhaps we can say was Malaysia for this. Okay. Was Malaysia. However, now we're making our comparison because it's not quite the same. It's different. So we're going to make that distinction now. However, Malaysia started off, so began in 1995 with more visitors. What have we got here? Oh, just over 20 million, I would say. So we can stay there, just over 20 million. Okay, so we have talked about our first group. We've made comparisons, we've talked about trends, we've given figures, we've used the language. Now I'm thinking, okay, we're time conscious. So we want to make a start on group number 2, I would say, and get that going. So Let's start off with France, because France has an increase also, but it's different. So let's talk about that. Okay. So how about we say France's tourists increased as well. So we're comparing that. France's tourists that's a bit of a mouthful there, but that's okay. Increased as well. So let's have a look at France. Where were they? Ooh, about the 30 million mark. So we can say starting at about, we've used, have we used about almost just over? I don't think we've used about. Okay, that's good. Starting at about 30 million in 1995. We then saw, compared to all the other countries, we can say a rapid increase. Yes, maybe we can use another word. This country then saw a, have we used rapid? No, we can put that in, a rapid, a climb. Let's use climb. A rapid climb that reached around, when does it stop? About the 60 million mark. Have we used around? About around. Okay. 60 million in the year 2000. In 2000. Oh, not 200, 2000. There we go. Okie dokie. So, yes, we've talked about that rapid increase there. And then it's relatively not a great increase. So we can perhaps state after a relatively, not completely, but relatively stable 5 years up until 2005. Nothing much to report. Stable 5 years. There was another, perhaps we can use sharp rise. Have we used rise before? Don't think so. Okay. There was another sharp rise inevitably to reach over 80 million in 2010. Okay, so we've got, these groups are coming along nicely. We've talked about Egypt, Brazil, we've mentioned Malaysia, France, that's a lot to talk about there. Let's just mention the USA we can do it in one sentence, I think, because as always, we're thinking about time. We want to make sure we can edit, we can read over. So maybe we just want to say in stark contrast, it's unlike all the other countries, to every destination, perhaps. We've used destination at the top though, so let's go to every country. Have we used country? Maybe not. Okay, that's good. In stark contrast to every country, the USA saw a slow decline in visitors. Visitors. Again. From 2005 to 2010. Okay, so this is the time where we would read it back. So the line graph below provides data on the topic of worldwide visitors to various destinations over 15 years. Paraphrasing, tick. On the whole, the number of tourists increased during this time. Additionally, the sharpest increase was seen in France. Yeah, great. Overview, tick, check. Egypt and Brazil in 1995 had almost the same number of visitors, around 7 million. In 2010, both countries also had a similar number, between 12 and 17 million, a steady increase. Yeah. Another place that grew gradually in popularity was Malaysia. However, Malaysia started off in 1995 with more visitors, just over 20 million. Okay, so we've summarised, we've grouped, we're showing the examiner that we can talk about the trends and what's happening. We've used the language here. I think we're doing well. Then group 2, France's tourists, I said it was a mouthful, France's tourists increased as well. Starting at about 30 million in 1995, this country then saw a rapid climb that reached around 60 million in 2000. After a relatively stable 5 years, there was another sharp rise to reach over 80 million in 2010. In stark contrast to every country, the USA saw a slow decline in visitors from 2005 to 2010. Okay, so we've included figures, brilliant language. Let's look at the question, selected numbers and features of the graph. We've reported and made comparisons between. Okay, and notice that this question we don't need to go into detail as to why. At no point have I said, this might be because, or I think this is due to the fact. No. We just want to report. It's like we are just feeding back the information making sure that we're paraphrasing and using synonyms. We don't want to copy. We want to show the examiner that we've understood and almost, given our take on it, if you like. Okay, so hopefully that gives you information and makes you feel a bit more confident about line graphs. Like I said, they're a popular type of graph in the exam, so necessary to practice this one. Okay, lovely. Oh, and I should say that before we go on to the next one, the word count, my calculations, about 152. So we want to aim for at least 150 words here, at least. So just something to bear in mind. Yeah, and you can, I think after enough practice, you can sort of see it by eye a little bit. You'll get the feel for it. But yeah, okay, brilliant. Well, let's go to our next type of question, which is the bar chart. So this is another popular method and one that you might come across. So we'll talk through it now together. Same process as before. Okay, so we open the page. This is what we are presented with. So first things first, let's read the question. The chart below shows the total number of minutes in millions of telephone calls in Finland, divided into 3 categories from 1995 to 2004. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Well, we've just looked at this, so it requires the same skills. Let's have a look. So we want to summarize, select, report, and make comparisons where relevant. So as we've just done in the last question, we'll follow the same process here. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's dive in. First thoughts, we've got our x-axis with the years here. We've got our y-axis with the minutes in millions, 2000 to 18,000, 1995 to 2004. Okay. Blue is local landline. Orange is national and international landline. And green is mobiles. Okay, so initial thoughts. Generally, the minutes that people are using. The telephone calls are increasing over time. Yeah, I'd say they're increasing, particularly mobiles. Look at that very sharp increase there. And of course, we can talk about how there was an initial increase with the local landlines, and then it falls down. So we'll talk about that. Okay, let's go to our plan. And the plan is so important to help you stay on track in the exam. When time pressures and nerves might take over, it's really useful to have something to refer to. Okay, so group 1 then. My initial feelings are that national and international landlines and mobiles follow a similar pattern. That would be a nice group to talk about. So let's put that here. Now this is quite, that's fine. This is quite a mouthful to say and to write. So yes, we just something to bear in mind. National and international landlines, mobiles, mobiles, and then group 2 we'll talk about local landlines. Local landline. Okay. All right. So let's think about our overview. Overall, calling minutes have increased, especially mobiles. Oh, let's do that. There we go. That will do for now. Okay, so that sounds good. Like I say before, go with your guts. Go with what makes sense to you. What's the easiest to compare and contrast? What you think the examiner will, if you were the examiner, what would you like to read? How would it make sense to you to group this? And I think that's the best way to approach that. So, okay, so now we have the question again. We of course have the data, and as with last time, we have this nice sort of graphic to show us that we can in fact include all of these words here. This is nice. Yeah. So welcome to include these to really boost your writing. They are going to be invaluable. Okay, and this is where we write the question. So as with like the last question, we want to paraphrase the question to show the examiner that we understand, we've digested the information, and we can paraphrase. Important skill here. So the chart, we can be more specific. The bar chart shows, I can say given perhaps. The bar chart given shows maybe displays is a good word, or yeah, we'll go with displays. The bar chart given displays the amount of phone calls in minutes. I can't think of another word for minutes. That's fine. In minutes. From the years 1995 to 2004. Okay, there we go. So a brief paraphrase there. We don't need to go into too much detail. That's perfect. Okay, let's go with our overview now. We can refer back to our plan, which is great. We don't have to rethink about this. That's when the plan comes in handy. So let's think. Before we used on the whole, Another good phrase, more often than not. Calling minutes have increased over time. Okay, increased over time. Another observation we want to include here, another observation includes landlines, sorry, local landlines. Well, we could talk about either, yes, we mentioned mobiles in the plan. That would be great. So another observation includes mobiles saw a rapid increase, perhaps closer to the end, or rapid increase perhaps from 1999, say. Or you could talk about another point, you could say, I don't know, local landlines remained popular throughout, or something like this. Okay, brilliant. So let's get stuck into our group 1. And we're going to go with, that was our national and international landlines and mobiles, so the orange and green down here. Okay, so they follow a similar pattern, and let's describe that now. Both national and international landlines and mobiles saw an increase. We've used that before, so we could say saw a surge in use from 1995 to 2004. Okay, let's dive in. Landlines. It's difficult to think of a synonym, maybe handheld phones, or it's tricky. I wouldn't spend too much time getting caught up, because sometimes when you think of a synonym and it's quite far off what you want to say, it gets a bit it becomes less accurate. So we'll stick with landlines. National and international started at 6,000. If we have a look, about 6,000 on the dot. 6,000 minutes, and ended, let's talk about the end, and ended roughly, I don't know, 10,300 minutes in 2004. Maybe with there. Okay. So landline started 6,000 minutes and ended roughly with 10,300 minutes in 2004. Okay. Let's go on to mobiles now. So mobiles, in fact, that's quite a nice phrase. When describing, in fact, saw a much sharper. Do we want to use increase? We've used surge, climb. That's quite nice. Climb. Sometimes I like a really short sentence just for sort of dramatic effects, I guess. So mobiles, in fact, saw a much sharper climb. Starting, I mean, they're hardly on the graph at the beginning, so we could say starting at barely 200 minutes in 1995, and ending with nearly 100,000 minutes in 2004. There we go. Okay. Lovely. So that's nearly as much as the national and international landlines. So maybe we can say that. This is nearly as much usage as national and international landlines. Landlines, yeah, fantastic. Okay, let's read that back. Both national and international landlines and mobiles saw a surge in use from 1995 to 2004. Landlines, national and international, started at 6,000 minutes and ended roughly with 10,300 minutes in 2004. Mobiles, in fact, saw a much sharper climb, starting at barely 200 minutes in 1995 and ending with nearly 100,000 minutes in 2004. This is nearly, we've used that. This is almost, have we used that? Don't think so. Almost as much usage as national and international landlines. Brilliant. So we've used figures, we've compared, we've talked about trends. I think that's great. Okay, grouping, our second paragraph now, group number 2, local landlines. So let's start about a general sort of overview. Okay, local landlines, however, comparing, initially started with much more time being used than other communication methods. So we're trying to find synonyms now. Time being used. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that flows. In 1995. And then sometimes I like to just put brackets for the figures. We don't have to really go into much detail. So from there, 12,000 on the dot it starts with. Brilliant. Then there's a sort of gradual increase there. So we can say after a gradual, we've used increase. Rise, after a gradual rise, it reaches its peak and I'd say 2001, maybe 17,000 perhaps. Gradual rise to reach its peak in 2001. And we can say that, we can say approximate, we can spell it, approximately 17,000. So we don't need to be exact, we can't see exact, so we can use these words, which are really great. Then after that, this figure dropped, I'd say quite rapidly maybe, or well, it definitely dropped quicker than it rose, so we can use rapidly. I think that's justifiable. So then let's look at 2004 then. Let's round this up and we can compare with the other communication methods now. So we've talked about local landlines in general. Now let's compare. So in 2004, local landlines had nearly 12,000 minutes being used. Again, minutes is hard to find a synonym for. In the end, it was still the most popular method of talking, or method in 2004. However, or although, a good synonym, although landlines, international, here we go, the big writing, national and international And mobiles they're not too far behind here. They're sort of all within the same range of each other. So we can say that we're not too far behind, perhaps. There we go. Okay, so let's read back the last paragraph and just make sure it sounds okay. Local landlines, however, initially started with much more time being used than other communication methods. Does that sound okay? We could say with much more usage, that might be better. Usage than other communication methods in 1995. Yep, okay, that's good. After a gradual rise, to reach its peak in 2001, approximately 17,000, this figure dropped rapidly. Yeah, pretty rapidly. We can be more, it's not really, maybe we could say quite rapidly. It's not really, really fast, but it's quite significant. In 2004, local landlines had nearly 12,000 minutes being used. Yep. It was still the most popular method, although landlines, national and international, and mobiles were not too far behind. Okay, so as you can see, editing is necessary. It's very important to go back and make sure that your spellings and just the flow and how it works, how it feels to you, make sure that all those grammatical errors are tweaked, and yeah, as you can see, that's very important. Making sure that you've used enough synonyms, you're not repeating yourself, you followed a nice structure. Yeah, and once all of those things are you're happy with, then I think that's great. So as you can see from today, you can report back, you can summarize and report the main features and make comparisons. And with these words here, that makes for a great writing task. So hopefully that's helped today. Thank you so much for coming along and listening. And we'll be here with more videos on other topics. So stay tuned and take care. See you next time. Bye bye.